Your Honor, may I resume questioning?
You may.
Thank you. Okay, so going back to State's Exhibit 8, the Verizon records, as far as the cell site records, did you also review those for phone numbers 978-884-4418 and 603-845-7815?
Yes, I did.
How did you go about determining cell tower location activity for these two numbers?
So as we discussed before the break, from the call detail records or the specialized location records that I received, in those records, I end up having the tower ID and the sector. So I end up matching that up with the actual carrier tower list that they provide, which ends up having the tower and the sector and the azimuth so that we know how those antennas are orientated on the tower. That information comes, it's voluminous, so it comes in spreadsheets, and I take those spreadsheets and they're loaded into mapping software to assist in creating the visuals that you're going to see. And then take a look at those manually and look at the raw data and make sure that they appear accurate based on the raw data.
So I have for you here State's Exhibit 44 in this booklet, and can you take a look at those? Do you recognize those maps?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize those?
They're maps that I created.
And are those fair and accurate depiction of the cell tower data that you reviewed as applied to a map?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this point, we'd like to distribute copies of the maps for the jury and the court and defense counsel so everyone can follow along.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have enough, or do you need?
Okay, it looks like everybody has a copy. Okay. So here we are looking at this map on the screen, the first map in our booklet. And can you just identify what map we're looking at here?
So you're looking at a map that depicts the towers and the sectors that are used by 978-884-4418 on April 4th, 2019 at 12:03 to 4:01 p.m.
And
12:03 a.m. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, 12:03 a.m. to 4:01 p.m.
Before we get into the specifics, can you explain the legend right here on the right-hand side?
Sure. So the orange circles indicate the individual towers, those physical structures, and where they're located that are used by the device. And the red star is the victim's residence at 118 West Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire.
And now can you explain what these purple sections indicate?
So if you recall back to the chart that I showed you with the pie shape, that's similar to what you're seeing here, is the actual sector that's being used by the device on the tower is that purple lines with the wedge. But remember what we talked about where the wedge is just an indicator of where that phone is. It doesn't mean that it's inside that shaded area at all.
And what about these white boxes? Can you explain what these indicate?
So that's the various connections. So the data that's represented on this map are those passive registrations I talked about. That's when the phone is continually interacting with the cellular network. We were able to receive that engineering data for this device. And so it's more comprehensive as to than call detail records, which we did not get cell site location data for. So these records are what I used. So within each of the white boxes, you're getting the date and time that connections were made with the tower and sector. And then you can see bolded is that unique ID number and the sector number.
generally speaking, when you reviewed the call detail records, did you see any cell phone calls or text messages that correspond generally with any of the connections documented on the map?
Yes, from the call detail records, yes.
Okay, looking at this chart, was there any outgoing communications during this time frame?
Yes, there were. There was an outgoing text message at 9:52 a.m.
And is that the text message that you're referring to there?
Yes, I am.
Were there any incoming communications on April 4th, 2019, between 12:03 a.m. and 4:01 p.m.?
Yeah, there was an incoming text message at 9:50 a.m. and an incoming call at 12:43 p.m.
Okay, and is that the incoming text message that you were referring to?
Yes, it is.
And the incoming call?
Yes.
So in total, 3 communications, 1 incoming text, 1 outgoing text, and 1 incoming call. Did the phone connect with more, did the phone connect more than 3 times to a tower, though, during that time frame?
Yes, it did. As you can see by all of the times in the towers that are indicated on the chart, the data was able to present to us the number of times that it actually connected to the towers and what towers it connected to.
So for instance, right here, from this tower, it says there were 152 connections?
That's correct, yep. During that time frame, there were 152 from that tower and that sector, yep.
So why would the phone be connecting to a cell tower if it wasn't being used by someone?
So as we discussed, this data reflects the actual, those passive registrations the phone is on and is continually talking to the network. So that's those registrations that are happening there from that tower.
Is it abnormal for a cell phone to be stationary but to hit off of more than one tower?
No, not necessarily. If you're stationary and you're within range of more than one tower, then that phone might hit off different towers as it's communicating with the network and it's looking for that best quality signal we talked about and the strongest signal. Then you may end up seeing, and plus availability is a factor as well, what's available on the network. So you might see a phone hit off of more than one tower while it's stationary.
And does that appear to be the case here?
It does, yes.
About how many towers did the phone connect with? Was it about 2 towers while it appeared stationary?
Yes, in this instance it does. The 2 that we have highlighted there appear to be the towers that when it's in the vicinity of 118 West Road that it uses those towers.
So is it fair to say that 118 West Road is within their sector?
Yes.
So is the data that you reviewed consistent with the cell phone being within the vicinity of 118 West Road for most of the day until at least 2:16 p.m. on April 4th?
For most of the day, yes, it is.
Can cell tower data provide any information regarding whether a cell phone may move to a different location?
Yes, it can. And as you can see on the map, you can see that if you follow chronologically with times, you can see movement of the phone as it's hitting off of different towers and sectors.
Okay. So what you're getting at is there was cell phone movement by this phone at some point during that day?
During that day, there was, yes.
Okay, and we'll talk about that in a moment. All right, so here, let's look at States Exhibits 28 and 29, which are pictures of a truck leaving from the area of 118 West Road and returning. Let's assume that the timestamp on these images is incorrect, and this top image, States Exhibit 28, shows a truck driving from 118 West Road at about 8:55 a.m. on April 4th. And this bottom image here shows a truck driving toward 118 West Road at about 9:23 on April 4th. Now looking at the highlighted portions of your chart for the cell phone with phone number 978-884-4418, Did the cell tower information that you reviewed indicate anything in terms of the general location of the cell phone between 8:55 a.m. and 9:23 a.m.?
Yes, if you follow the times in the white boxes, you can see that the phone generally moves from the vicinity of 118 West Road towards Derry, New Hampshire. And that first hit, you want me to walk through, Heather?
Okay, I'm sorry, if the jury could, at this point, we're gonna just pay attention right up at the screen, because this is going to actually indicate the movement that we're looking at, as opposed to all the information contained within your maps. So, if you could please continue explaining.
So if you look up on the screen, the tower we talked about that's just south of that red star, that, you know, be the 61115, you can see that at 8:58:08 a.m., the device is hitting off of Sector 3. And then just a few seconds later at 8:58:16 a.m., the device is hitting off of Sector 2, so on the other side of the tower. So that's what we talked about, how when we looked at the sectors earlier, when is north of the tower and then it's the other side. So there we have it on the other side. And then as you move along at 9 o'clock, 9:51 a.m., it's onto another tower, which is 61324, Sector 3. And then the device continues and begins hitting off of a tower from about 9:05 to 9:15. It's hitting off of 61263, Sector 3. And then we do have, as we talked about, it's possible that a device could be stationary and maybe hit off more than one tower. And that is the possibility when you look at that tower that's up near Derry on the map. It's hard to say, you know, that could be, in fact, just a stationary hit where the device is.
And I'm just going to get a laser point next to a laser point.
Is that what this might be? Yeah, I think I have one.
Oh, you have it?
Yep.
Okay.
It looked like a pen, yep.
So with the detail that you just provided to the jury, can you just show them generally now with the
Absolutely.
time? Thank you.
So if we start here, that's your 8:58, and the device is moving around the backside of the tower and then up through, and pretty much residing here from 9:05 to 9:15.
All right, so now let's look at States Exhibit 29 and 30. Let's assume again that this top image is a truck driving toward 118 West Road at about 9:23 a.m. And this bottom image is an SUV driving away from 118 West Road at about 2:45 p.m. Was the data that you reviewed consistent with the cell phone remaining in the vicinity of 118 West Road between about 9:23 a.m. and 2:45 p.m.?
Yes, it was.
Focusing just now on States Exhibit 30, did you review data consistent with cell phone movement after about 2:45 p.m. on April 4th?
Yes, I did.
What did the cell tower data indicate in terms of general location of the cell phone in regard to the highlighted portions of this map? And again, I'm going to direct the jury's attention to the map up here on the screen.
So I'll just help out with the pointer. So at this tower and sector, beginning at 3 o'clock, the device is connected to that tower and the one just south of it. So at that time, beginning around 3, the device is in the Nashua-Hudson area.
So what general directionality was the data consistent with after 2:45 p.m.?
South of Londonderry, New Hampshire.
Now, in addition to the number 978-884-4418 cell tower data, you also reviewed cell tower data for the number 603-845-7815, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so now we're turning to the next map in States Exhibit 4, map number 2. Can you please explain to the jury what we're looking at here?
So here you're looking at similar data. This is the towers and sectors that were used by target number 603-845-7815 on April 4th, 2019, between the times of 12:19 a.m. and 3:17 p.m. And this is the similar data. This is, you see the white boxes again with the connections. And we also had just very sparse cell site location information provided from call detail records.
And is this the same general time parameters as the chart you just reviewed with the jury for the 978 cell phone?
Yes.
Looking at State's Exhibit 43, that communications chart, so I'd ask the jury now to look back up at the screen. Did you see any cell phone calls or text messages that correspond with any of the connections between 12:19 a.m. and 3:17 p.m. on April 4th, 2019 for the phone number 603-845-7815?
Yes, there were two incoming calls, one at 8:55 a.m. and one at 9:55 a.m. Then there were two incoming text messages, one at 12:37 p.m. and one at 2:42 p.m. And then finally an outgoing text message at 2:56 p.m.
Okay, and so is that those the two phone calls that you were referring to?
Mm-hmm.
And the text messages that you were referring to that were incoming?
Yes.
And then lastly, is this the outgoing text message at 2:56 p.m. that you were referring to?
Correct, yes.
Did any of the data indicate that the cell phone associated with the 603 number moved prior to 8:55 a.m. on April 4th?
No, it did not.
Now, looking at the blue highlighted portions on this map, and again, at this point, we're going to focus our attention to the maps up on the screen so we can look at the highlighted portions. Are these the same two towers that you identified for the 978 number as being in the vicinity of 118 West Road?
Yes, they are.
Is this consistent with the 603 number being in the vicinity of 118 West Road prior to 8:55 a.m.?
Yes, it is.
All right, so let's look at State's Exhibit 28 and 29. And again, let's assume that these pictures depict a truck coming from the direction of 118 West Road at about 8:55 and then returning to the area at about 9:23. And the bottom one's the 9:23.
Okay.
Now looking at the highlighted portion of your chart for the cell phone number with phone number 603-845-7815, what did the cell tower information that you reviewed indicate in terms of the general location of the cell phone between 8:55 a.m. and 9:23 a.m.?
It indicated that the phone began to move from the vicinity of 118 West Road towards Derry, New Hampshire, around the backside of the tower and up towards Derry.
Was this movement consistent with the data indicating movement during this time frame for the phone number 978-884-4418?
Yes, it was.
All right, let's look at these images, and again, let's assume that these pictures depict a truck going toward the direction of 118 West Road at about 9:23 a.m. And then at the bottom here, we have an SUV leaving the direction of 118 West Road at about 2:45 p.m. Now looking at the highlighted portion of your chart, was the data that you reviewed consistent with the cell phone with the area code 603 being in the area of 118 West Road between about 9:23 a.m. and 2:45 p.m.?
Yes, it was.
Was this consistent with the cell site location data for the 978 cell phone during that same time frame?
Yes, it is.
Focusing on State's Exhibit 30, assuming that this image depicts an SUV driving away from the area of 118 West Road at 2:45 p.m. Looking at the blue highlighted portion of this chart, what did the cell tower data that you reviewed indicate in terms of the general location of the cell phone beginning at about that time frame? And again, I'm going to direct the jury's attention up to the screen, please.
It indicated that the device started to move from the vicinity of 118 West Road down towards the Nashua-Hudson area at approximately 2:58 p.m.
Okay, now we will be looking at the third map that you have in the State's Exhibit 44. Can you please explain what this chart indicates?
Sure. So this chart indicates the towers and sectors used by both devices on April 4th, 2019, between the 12:03 a.m. and 4:01 p.m. So basically, it's an overlay of the two previous maps that you looked at.
So if one of these cell sites has both the brown and the purple color present, what does that mean?
That means that they were both using that cell tower and sector at generally the same time of day.
So this might seem obvious, but what if we just see the purple color?
Then that's only the 978 device is using that tower and sector, and the same with the brown. It would be the 603 device.
What about for this area with an arrow pointing to the pink highlighted portion for ENODE B61253, Section 1?
That would be the last area, so it's the last tower and sector that device used on April 4th, 2019, between 3 p.m. and 4:01 p.m. And that would be like right here.
Where is the last area that both the 603, 845, 7815, and 978, 884, 4418 cell phones overlap? What's the last area?
It would be at that tower in the Nashua-Hudson area.
And generally, what was the last time period, the general time period that the cell site connections for these two cell phones overlapped in the same area?
Between the time period of 3 and 3:17 p.m.
What did the cell tower data that you reviewed indicate happened after that last area of overlap?
So after that last area, you can see that the 603 device starts using different towers and then travels south down here.
And I believe that you already repeated this, but let's focus on the group of cell towers highlighted at the bottom of the map here. And
Okay.
again, can you just tell us what geographic area is encompassed by these cell towers?
That's the Nashua-Hudson area.
All right, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 2, which is a Dunkin' Donuts receipt, a Dunkin' Donuts transaction. Can you indicate what purchases this reflects?
It reflects a 1 6-piece hash brown, 1 egg, bacon, and cheese sandwich on a bagel, and 1 medium iced coffee.
And in the upper right-hand corner, can you read the highlighted section for the jury? And if you're having difficulty, I can give you the actual exhibit.
That's okay. It's a 4/4/2019, 15:13.
And in Eastern Standard Time, what time is 15:13?
That's 3:13 p.m.
Did both cell phones utilize cell towers consistent with being in the Hudson area at about that time?
Yes, they did.
So was the data consistent with both cell phones being in the Hudson area at 3:13 p.m. when the hash brown, egg, bacon, and cheese bagel sandwich and iced coffee were ordered from Dunkin' Donuts?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you explain for the jury what the data indicates regarding the cell phone connection at the bottom of the map? Sector 3, it's ENODE B 58099 right here.
So that's a tower that's located in Tingsboro, Mass. And it shows that the 603 device connected to that tower at 3:28:47 p.m.
What about the cell phone with the 978 area code? What was the last general vicinity for that phone according to the cell site records?
The last general vicinity is at this tower here in the Hudson-Nashua area.
Okay, so let's go on to the last slide now. And this would be the last map in State's Exhibit 44. Can you please explain to the jury what this cell site map depicts?
This depicts the continued movement of the 603-845-7815 device on April 4th, 2019, between 3:28:47 and 4:42 p.m. So you can see that up here is that cluster of towers that was in the Hudson, Nashua area, and then the tower that I mentioned that was in Tingsboro is here. And then it just shows that that device continued to travel south down through Massachusetts towards Connecticut.
And again, this map depicts 3:28 p.m. and 4:42 p.m. on April 4th, 2019?
Correct.
Okay. At this point, we're done looking at the maps. We have just a few more questions left. Did the 603 number connect to any cell towers after 4:42 p.m. on April 4th?
Yes, the device continued to travel south towards Connecticut.
And on April 5th, 2019, did the cell site data indicate that the 603 number connected to any cell towers?
Yes, it did.
Geographically, where did those connections occur?
At Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut.
Were there any connections after about 9 a.m. on April 5th?
Not according to the available data, no.
What could be among the reasons that no further cell site information would be available at that time?
It could be that the phone was turned off, the battery died. It could have been in airplane mode, so therefore the radio antenna was no longer able to interact with the network. Or, those are the major reasons why.
Thank you. If I may just have one moment. All right, I have no further questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Any cross-examination?
Thank you. No questions.
Okay.
Okay. And so may this witness be excused by both sides?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Ma'am, you can step down, you can stay, or leave as you choose.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I will collect the map from the jury at this time. Your Honor, the state calls Officer Ethan Cohen to the stand.
Sir, if you could raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide to this court and jury shall be the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And once you're close enough to that microphone, if you could state your full name for our court reporter and spell your last name.
Okay. My name is Ethan Cohen, C-O-H-E-N.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. And I'm going to remind you that because we're wearing masks, volume sometimes of our voice is diminished, so if you could keep your voice up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
Are you currently employed?
Yes,
Where are you employed?
with the Mashantucket Tribal Police Department.
And can you tell us a little bit about that department? Where is it located?
It's located in Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut.
And in April in 2019, where did you work?
At that same department.
And what was your position there at that time?
I'm a police officer.
I'd like to direct your attention specifically to April 5th, 2019. Did you assist the New Hampshire State Police in locating William Argie?
Yes, I did.
Do you see William Argie here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Can you please identify him and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing for the record?
He's over here, right next to you. He's got a purple tie on, I believe.
Thank you. Your Honor, would the record please reflect the witness has identified the defendant?
It will.
On April 5th, 2019, where did you locate the defendant?
He was inside the poker room at the casino.
Were you with other officers when the defendant was located?
Yes.
Were some officers wearing body cameras during that interaction?
Yes.
I'm showing you State's Exhibit 14. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And how do you recognize this?
My signatures are, my initials are on there.
And do your initials indicate that you've viewed the footage contained on State's Exhibit 14?
Yes.
And is this body camera footage from April 5th, 2019, portions of it?
That's
with your
correct.
interactions with the defendant
Yes.
and others' interactions with the defendant?
Yes.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to play about 30 seconds of some of that body camera footage. And if you wouldn't mind, can we just dim the lights just a little bit to make sure everybody can see it? And then after we view this, I'll have some questions for you. Okay, so where was the defendant located during this portion of the video?
That's the poker room inside of the casino.
All right, and who is this officer that was seen getting him from the table and speaking with him afterwards?
That was Captain Potts.
So after the defendant was located in the poker room, was he brought outside?
Yes.
What happened when he was outside?
The captain spoke to him, and basically after a few minutes he indicated that he had tried to hurt himself by committing suicide. And at that time, the decision was made to transport him to the hospital.
Did he make any statements at that point about, did he indicate that he tried to kill himself?
Yes.
Okay. And so was he actually taken to the hospital?
Yes.
Did you remain with him for a period of time when he was brought to the hospital?
Yes.
Do you recall being with him at the hospital for at least a half an hour?
Yes.
And were you also wearing a body camera at that time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to play about 3 minutes from the body camera footage for the jury, and then I'll have some questions for you. Yes, and if you could dim the lights, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to restart it?
Yes, if we could. I'm sorry, we're just going to start that over again, turn the volume up a little bit, and try this again. Thank you very much.
Yeah. What does that mean? Hurry up? Yeah.
I see all the people selling their farm trucks now. Yeah, there's no stoves here. It's a nice,
I can't believe I know snow at all. That's good.
it's a nice 250 with a plow on it, 6,500.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to do some plowing, right? But then I just lost the motivation.
Yeah, do you not plow?
No.
Because I thought you would just go out there and...
No, we have a science.
Yeah, because you'll be out there.
I've seen some videos where all of a sudden the truck's driving, and next thing you know, the plow gets caught, the truck goes over the plow.
Oh, when they hit, yeah.
Hit something,
Yeah,
the
speed
plow
bump,
goes
yeah.
underneath the truck. Yeah, no, I ain't doing that in my truck.
And if you have a bunch of accounts, you need more than one truck.
Oh, yeah.
Is it one, and they break down all the time.
Yeah, well, that's the way that should be.
Hi
How you doing?
there. How are you, Harley? Nurse practitioner, chairman of the providers. What's going on?
See you guys.
Four. Okay, and did you go to solid with it? Okay, we'll wait it up.
Just, I'll let you know.
Okay, so you want to start us up? Okay. When did you do this? What time? In the morning or night? Morning. Okay. So we'll do it right away.
While you were sitting with the defendant, did he begin a conversation with you about a television show?
Yes.
While he was laying in bed, what was his demeanor like?
He appeared calm.
While you were in the room with the defendant, did medical staff check on him?
Yes.
And when they asked him why he was in the hospital, what did he do?
He turned his palms upwards, and he demonstrated, or he was showing where he had tried to cut his wrist.
And did he say why he tried to hurt himself?
Yeah, he said that he's not liking life right now, basically.
Did he say how old the wounds were?
Well, he said he did it around 11 a.m. within the last 24 hours.
Okay, so he said that 11 a.m. the day before?
Yes.
And I'm now showing you State's Exhibit 19. This is a few pictures that were taken from the body camera footage, correct?
Yes.
All right, so let's start here with this picture on the top left-hand corner. And can you just tell us what we're seeing here?
That's the poker room at the casino.
Okay. And is this an image of the defendant sitting at the poker table?
Yes.
Okay, and now moving to the picture on the right-hand side here, what is depicted here?
That's the defendant outside of the poker room.
All right, and now moving to this picture right here at the bottom, who is seen in this picture?
And that's also the defendant.
The defendant, and then who is right here?
That's the nurse.
All right, so I'd like to just direct your attention to the defendant's positioning here. Can you explain to the jury how the defendant's legs are positioned here?
They appear to be crossed, ankles crossed over.
And is that representative of how the defendant appeared during the majority of the time you spent with him in the hospital room?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions right now.
Mr. Argie said, "I'm so relieved," when you and the other officers first approached him. "I'm relieved that you found me."
Well, I wasn't the actual officer that handcuffed him, brought him out of the poker room. I was actually standing outside.
But what I'm saying, you've heard of before.
Yes, I've heard it on, yeah.
And in terms of postures and Mr. Argie's posture and stuff, you've never met Mr. Argie before.
No.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, and may this officer be excused by both sides?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, sir, you can step down, you can stay or leave as you choose. Thank you.
Your Honor, the state calls Kelley Hobbs to the stand. Thank you.
Afternoon. If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide this court and jury shall be the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated. And if you could get close enough to that microphone and then tell our court reporter your full.
Sorry. If it's too close to you, then
okay.
it's great right there.
And if you could state your full name for our court reporter and spell your last name.
My name is Kelley Louise Hobbs. Last name is Hobbs.
Thank you, Ms. Hobbs. I want to remind you that because you're wearing a mask, it somewhat impedes your voice, so if you could try to project just a little bit more than you'd normally.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hobbs. There's also a water there for you.
Thank you.
It's my understanding your voice is a little hoarse today.
Correct.
If you need a break at any time, please just let us know and we can take a break and let you have some water and kind of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Ms. Hobbs, are you familiar with William Argie?
Yes, I am.
How are you familiar with him?
He's my brother.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you please identify him and describe an article of clothing he's wearing for the record?
He's right there, and he's wearing a purple tie.
Your Honor, would the record please reflect that the witness has identified the defendant?
It will.
Ms. Hobbs, did you also know Maureen Argie?
Yes.
How did you know her?
She was my friend, and then later my sister-in-law.
For about how long had you known Maureen in 2019?
Approximately 22 years.
Where did you two meet?
We met in college.
How would you describe your relationship with Maureen?
Morin was a very good friend of mine.
Did you keep in regular contact with Maureen over the many years that she was your friend?
I did.
Who were other friends of Maureen?
Megan, she had a friend named Cindy. Those are the two that come to mind.
From the many years of friendship that you shared with Maureen and what you saw, did she have any health or medical issues in her adulthood?
None that I'm aware of.
Was Maureen ever hospitalized for illness or medical condition in her adulthood other than for pregnancy?
None that I'm aware of.
Over the many years that you were friends with, spoke with, and interacted with Maureen, how would you describe her general demeanor?
Maureen is a very quiet person, very calm. Yeah, very quiet, calm, sort of go with the flow kind of person.
Based on your many interactions and conversations with your friend Maureen, did she ever appear suicidal?
No.
With respect to Maureen, based on your interactions with her over the years in various different social settings, would you agree with the following statement? Maureen drank a lot.
No.
Why would you not agree with that?
She did drink, but the only time I ever saw her drink was at social occasions or, holidays, family functions, that kind of thing.
Over those years that you were friends with Maureen, did you see her interact with her children, Ella and Gavin?
Yes.
What did you see with respect to their relationship?
Maureen loved her kids dearly. She was a good mom. She was very patient with them.
Was she an attentive mother?
Yes.
Did she care and provide for her children from what you saw?
Yes.
From what you saw of Maureen's interactions with her children and discussions that you had with her in the weeks before she died, did she have any any intention of leaving her kids?
No.
What about relinquishing primary custody of them to the defendant?
No.
Based on your relationship with Maureen over the years, how would you describe her schedule?
From what I know, Morin was very routine person. And she liked kind of following a structure as much as she could with her work and my brother's work. Sometimes that couldn't happen, but she was pretty routine.
Now let's turn to your relationship with the defendant. Did you grow up in the same household as him?
I did.
For about how long were you in the same household with him?
My whole life, I'm trying to think, until he went to college.
And do you and the defendant share a sister?
Yes, we do.
What is her name?
Karen.
What's Karen's last name?
Argie.
In regard to your family, are you familiar with the phrase, the unit?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
It's like a thing in my family to say, like, family love, family importance.
Did you maintain contact with the defendant through adulthood?
Yes.
How so, generally?
I think a normal brother-sister relationship. We'd call each other, see each other for our kids' things or family functions.
Are you familiar with his handwriting?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm showing you State's Exhibit 90. Do you recognize the handwriting in State's Exhibit 90?
Yes.
And whose handwriting do you recognize that to be?
That's my brother Bill's.
From the time that you've spent with the defendant, who did you know to be his friends in 2018 and 2019?
He had his friend Dan LaRochelle, and he had a friend named Ray. I don't know how close they were around those years, but I would say that they were his closest that I knew of.
And within your family, who was the defendant closest with?
I would say my mom, Brenda Quinn.
How would you describe your mother's relationship with the defendant?
Supportive. I think she would do anything for any of her kids, including him.
With respect to both Maureen and the defendant, did they each have their own cars in the spring of 2019?
Yes, they did.
Do you remember what they drove?
I believe Maureen drove like a SUV kind of car. I can't remember what my brother drove.
In late 2018 into 2019, What was the status of the marriage between Maureen and the defendant based on your conversations with them?
It was not good. It was falling apart.
Did you ever personally observe the defendant and Maureen's interactions during this time period?
Yes.
Do you recall how the defendant treated Maureen?
They very distantly. I think they were both very stressed, and so I often witnessed just sort of a distant relationship.
But do you recall how the defendant treated Maureen?
How he treated her. Sometimes there was yelling and negative words. I can't tell you exactly what.
Do you remember speaking with the police in this case?
I do remember.
And do you remember that conversation with the police was recorded?
Yes.
And there was a transcript made from that?
Yes.
If I showed you that transcript, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
Okay.
Page 47 and 48.
If I may put this is double-sided. So you go ahead and read 47 and 48 when to yourself. When you're done, just go ahead and look up. Did that refresh your memory?
Yes.
How did the defendant treat Morin?
He was not kind to her.
Was
At
that-
times.
You said he was a jerk to her, right?
Yes.
In addition to seeing the defendant treating her unkind, as you said, and seeing that firsthand, did he also talk to you about his relationship with Maureen and about divorce?
Yes.
Was this a single conversation or discussions the defendant had with you repeatedly over time?
We had a few conversations.
Do you remember some of the things that the defendant talked to you about regarding his feelings toward Maureen and his relationship with her?
Yes.
And what were some of those things you remember?
That he went back and forth between wanting a divorce and not. He was very upset. At times he wanted to leave the state and start somewhere new. And other times he was worried about losing custody of the kids or not being able to see them as much. And then, he was worried about losing some of his money, like paying. So he kind of went the gamut with his concerns about divorce.
Do you remember him being angry towards Maureen during these conversations?
Angry towards Maureen?
When he would talk to you about it?
Oh, yes, he was angry, yes.
Now, you mentioned that he would talk about moving. Do you remember where he would talk about moving?
I believe it was South Carolina or North Carolina, and at one point he also mentioned moving to Massachusetts.
Do you recall him complaining to you at all about Maureen and her financial contributions?
Yeah, it upset him that she didn't make more money.
Did the defendant talk to you at all about do you remember him talking to you at all about where he was going to go if they got divorced?
No, I mean, at times he would say he was going to go to South Carolina or North, and like I said, I couldn't remember one of the Carolinas. And then other times he felt like he wasn't sure where he would go if they got divorced.
Do you remember what the defendant's demeanor was like and his tone was like when he spoke to you about his problems with Maureen?
Yeah, he was upset.
Do you remember what else his tone and demeanor were like?
I mean, he was angry. Yes, he was angry.
All right, so let's talk about the defendant's comments about moving to North Carolina or South Carolina. Can you tell the jury about your conversations regarding why specifically he wanted to go there?
Sure. He wanted to go there. He was offered a job in one of those states, and he really wanted to go, and Morin did not want to go. And so he, I think, thought after the divorce that would be an option for him to go to one of those states and either apply for the job again or a new job.
Do you remember what the defendant said to you regarding Maureen's impact on his professional life?
No, I do not.
If I showed you your transcript, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
I'm looking at the second transcript from May 17th on page 40. There you go. If you just take a look at that and just look up when you're done.
This page
Oh,
too.
no. Unless you would like to, it's up to you. Did that refresh your memory?
Yeah.
And how did the defendant feel that Maureen impacted his professional life?
So he was upset because he wanted to make a move to South Carolina, and she didn't want to go. So he was upset that that she didn't want to go.
He felt that she was holding him back?
Yeah, in that instance, yes.
In addition to the defendant's marital issues with Maureen, do you remember what the defendant's job status was in late 2018, early 2019?
I believe he was working per diem as a physician assistant. I don't believe there was a full-time job.
Okay. Do you remember what the defendant talked to you about in regard to gambling?
He felt that since he felt he could afford to gamble because he made good money.
And what did the defendant feel in regard to gambling and his income? Did he believe it was a way of supplementing his income?
Yeah, he did believe that if he won, it would be a supplement to his income.
Did the defendant gamble frequently?
Yes.
Based on your conversations with the defendant, did he think that he had an issue with gambling?
No, I don't think he believed he had an issue with gambling.
Around March of 2018, did you and other family members and friends of the defendant have an intervention with him?
Yes, we did.
Do you remember what behavior was addressed at that intervention?
Sure. We talked about his gambling and we thought he needed some mental health care.
Who attended the intervention?
My sister Karen, Maureen, Dan LaRochelle, and Ray Karen.
Did your mother also attend?
I'm sorry, yes, and Brenda Quinn.
Do you recall how the defendant responded to that confrontation that you and others had with him about his behavior?
Yeah, he was angry, didn't think he had a problem, and thought we were being a little ridiculous.
Do you remember how the defendant treated Morin during that intervention?
Yeah, he was mad because I believe she was the one that spearheaded it or was working with someone who attended the intervention on what we would do and how we would do it, so he was mad at her.
Do you recall where Maureen stayed that night?
She stayed at my house.
All right, now turning to the months leading up to Maureen's death, did the defendant talk to you about how he was feeling about his life?
Yes.
And what did he say?
He was not happy. He didn't have a job he liked. The marriage wasn't going the way he wanted, so he wasn't happy.
Did he feel that his life was going in a positive direction?
No.
Fair to say he felt like his life was falling apart?
Yes.
Let's now turn to the weeks before Maureen's death. Were you in regular contact with Morin at that time?
I was.
What about the defendant?
Yes.
Did you communicate with each by cell phone?
Yes.
All right, so right now we're looking at State's Exhibit 42, which is a phone number chart. Does this chart accurately state your cell phone number, circled in red there, from spring of 2019?
Yes, it does.
And then we're going to look up at the top, and does that accurately reflect the defendant's cell phone number from that time, spring 2019?
I can't be sure, but I can't be sure.
Okay. And what about your mother, Brenda Quinn? Does that cell phone look correct for her?
I also don't know.
Okay. At some point in the weeks leading up to her death, did Maureen and the defendant discuss divorce?
Yes.
Whose plan was it at that point to move forward with a divorce?
Maureen.
Did you talk to both Maureen and the defendant about that?
I did.
What was the defendant's reaction to Maureen's request for a divorce?
As I said before, he was angry. His emotions really ran the gamut between wanting the divorce to not wanting a divorce and not wanting to give up custody or money. Yeah.
Do you remember about how long you spent on the phone with your brother discussing Maureen's request for a divorce?
I don't remember how long.
If I showed you your transcript, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
I'm showing from the second transcript, page 39 or 40. Here, I'm going to thank you.
You may.
There you are. You can read 39 and turn to the back page of 40 as well, and when you're done, just look up. about how long did you have that discussion with the defendant?
45 minutes.
Now, when you would talk to him, the defendant, about money and his financial situation, what was his viewpoint on that? Was he concerned with money?
He was concerned with money and their financial status.
What about in terms of the divorce? Was he concerned with money in terms of the divorce?
Yeah, he said he was concerned about how much he would have to pay for child support, and he didn't want to.
And now, what was the defendant's job status during the weeks prior to Maureen's death?
I believe he was unemployed.
All right. And what did the defendant tell you about his financial situation at that time?
That he was about to file for bankruptcy, or just did.
Okay. Did you help the defendant and Maureen financially during this time?
I did.
And how so?
I paid for the kids' summer camp.
Do you recall about when you paid for the kids' summer camp in relation to Maureen's death?
About a week before she passed away.
Okay. And during this time period, did you spend some time with Maureen? When you paid for the kids' summer camp, did you see her that day?
Yes. We spent some time together in my car.
All right. And do you recall discussing anything about Maureen's intentions regarding her living situation at that time?
Yes.
What was that conversation?
She and the kids were going to move in with my mother temporarily until she figured out a new apartment or housing situation.
And was that the last time that you saw Maureen before she died?
It was.
Did you receive some emails from her after you last saw her?
I did.
All right, so I'd now like to direct your attention to April 1st. So we have the calendar on the screen. I believe it states Exhibit 90. And I'm showing you now States Exhibit 56. This is an email from April 1st, 2019. Do you recognize this email?
I do.
And how do you recognize this?
I'm one of the recipients.
And is this the email one of the emails that you received from Maureen?
Yes, it is.
All right, so I'm going to read this first, and then I'll have some questions for you about it, okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's start up here with the headers. So it's from Maureen Argie at maureenargie@yahoo.com. Were you familiar with that email address?
Yes.
Is that an email address that Maureen would use to communicate with you?
Yes.
All right, and now let's look at who this email is to. So we have Kelley Hobbs, hobbs.kelley@yahoo.com, and is that you?
Yes, it is.
All right, and then next we have Karen Argie, karencoloration@yahoo.com, and who is that?
That is my sister, Karen.
Next we have Matt Gaudette, Gaudy79@yahoo.com, who is that?
It's Maureen's brother.
And then after that is listed Aaron Gaudette, aaron.gaudette@oxfordcorp.com. Who is that?
It's Maureen's sister-in-law.
Then we have Ann Gaudette, amgaudette@verizon.net. Who's that?
That is Maureen's mom.
And then we have Joe Gaudette, ace165@verizon.net. Who is that?
That's Maureen's dad.
And then lastly we have Cindy Tanuma, cindy@comcaregivers.org. And who is that?
That's Maureen's friend, Cindy.
Was the defendant one of the people who was on this email sent by Maureen?
No.
All right, so the email begins, "Hi, I'm sort of overwhelmed with everything, but I am trying to get a plan together. At this point, I need help with painting, decluttering, and bringing stuff to Cindy's house, free storage, so house can be sold, at least one potential outdoor thing, getting mold off one side of the house, and packing to move out with the kids. Do you know what Maureen was referencing here with respect to painting and taking items to Cindy's?
Yeah, she was trying to get the house ready to sell because they were getting divorced and knew that no one would be able to afford to live there by themselves.
So the Cindy that she's referencing in this first paragraph, is that the same Cindy that's on this email?
Yes, it is.
The second paragraph starts, I'm looking at Saturday, April 6th, Sunday, April 14th, and/or Monday, April 15th. I have all days off. Do you know what Maureen was referring to then when she said she was looking at Saturday, April 6th, Sunday, April 14th, and/or Monday, April 15th?
Yeah, those were the days that she was looking to move some of her stuff, the kids' stuff, to Cindy's house and,
Okay.
and work on the house.
She then goes on to say, I am off April 13th, but we have softball and baseball games. I don't know times yet. And Gav has B-Day party, so I couldn't guarantee that I would be there for most of the time. That is okay with me. Up to you all if you care if you are there alone or with Billy. And when she's referring to Gav there, who is she referring to?
Her son, Gavin,
And when she mentions Billy, who is she referring to?
my brother.
She goes on to state, obviously you can help with packing if I'm not there, but you could come during the week for the other stuff. Billy is around most of the time. He has no April work schedule as of now. He has agreed to work with everyone to meet this common goal, but he keeps flip-flopping on that. I appreciate all your offers to help out. I may not even need all your help, just trying to see if, when anyone is available, and to do what. Thanks, Maureen. When Maureen was stating here she wanted to see if or what people were available, what was she trying to do with this email?
She was trying to get her people together to help her get the house ready to sell and for her to move out.
Okay. All right, so that email was sent on April 1st. Now I'm directing your attention to April 2nd, 2019. And I'm showing you an email that is dated Tuesday, April 2nd, 6:56 a.m. from, again, Maureen Argie. And just again, going through who this email was sent to, Gotti at 79@yahoo.com. I believe you testified that was her brother, Matt.
Correct.
And then Kelley Hobbs, you testified as yourself.
Correct.
Karen Argie is your sister.
Correct.
Erin Gaudet is her sister-in-law.
Correct.
Ann Gaudet was Maureen's mother.
Correct.
Joe Gaudet is her father.
Correct.
And Cindy Tanuma is another friend.
Correct.
Okay. So again, I'm going to read this email and then I'll have some questions for you. So she begins with, maybe I need guidance, but my situation is different. I wanted painting and taking any stuff to Cindy's first. Packing stuff we will need for Brenda's last, because once I do that, we have to move out. Can you explain what she meant by that? Of Brenda, specifically.
That is where she was going to move with the kids. And so, the stuff she was going to need for every day living at my mom's house would be the last things that she would move out.
And when she says she wanted to pack the things that we will need for Brenda's house. Who was moving to Brenda's house?
Gavin, Ella, and Maureen.
Okay, so it goes on to say, cleaning very last, although some can get done before. House will not be empty. He will stay here until sold. Then we will probably have to sell a lot because there will be only so much space at Brenda's Cindy's. Maybe you could take a few things. I would really want house on market by end of this month at the latest. And so, did you know if Maureen and the defendant hired a realtor to sell their house?
I don't know if they officially hired a realtor, but they had someone come and look at the house.
Do you remember who that person was?
Yes.
Who is that?
Karen Waystack.
Was Karen Waystack a randomly selected realtor?
No, she's a friend of the family.
Okay, so this email was sent to you on April 2nd, 2019, about 6:56 a.m. Do you remember speaking with Maureen on the phone about these emails?
I do not.
Okay. Well, right here I'm showing you a communications chart from April 2nd, 2019. And it lists some phone calls that you had with Maureen Argie. Does that refresh your memory about some conversations you had with her on that date?
I mean, I know I talked to her regularly and checked in. I don't remember exactly what we spoke about.
If I showed you a transcript, would that help refresh your memory?
Sure.
Okay. I'm showing from the first transcript, page 33 and 34.
Yep.
Okay, so does that refresh your memory?
Yes, I remember that conversation. I didn't realize when it was.
Okay. All right, so what were some of the things that you spoke with Maureen about during that conversation?
We spoke about her having a promotion at work and an upcoming interview and feeling hopeful. She felt hopeful for the first time in a while. She didn't seem, I heard like a little spark in her voice that I hadn't heard in a while. So we talked briefly about that. I believe the interview was within the next week.
Okay, and did you also talk with her about her plans for moving and painting the house?
Yes, we talked about that. She had told me when I last talked, she always felt like she was bothering me by calling and asking for advice. And last time I talked to her, she had said, "I won't bother you for 7 days." And she called me, and it hadn't been 7 days, so she was joking with me and said, "I know it hasn't been 7 days, but she had spoken with her brother Matt about house plans and moving plans and wanted to get my intake on that."
And I think you testified that you heard a spark in her voice that you hadn't heard for a while.
Yes.
Can you just describe what her tone of voice and what her demeanor sounded like on the phone during that call?
Sure. Well, I had no idea that she was looking for a new job. I don't know how it happened, but she talked to me about this possible promotion at work and that it would come with a pay increase and a new challenge for her. And she just seemed excited in her voice, and I told her I was really happy for her and proud of her for doing this, knowing that she was going through a stressful situation, and she said, "Thanks, I'm excited for this too."
In addition to text messages and phone calls, did you also exchange messages with Maureen using iPhone messenger application iMessage?
I don't know. I'm really not good at technology. I don't know. Would that be just a regular text message?
Through iPhone, like an iMessage, and I can...
I don't know.
Okay,
yeah,
if I showed you a message, could that potentially...
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to be showing her Exhibit 95. Okay, there you are. If you can go ahead and just kind of flip through those. This is State's Exhibit 95 for identification. And just referring up to the top,
Oh, yes,
Okay, so those are all
Yes,
messages
those
that
are
you exchanged with her?
correct, yes.
Okay. So before you, you have some iMessages exchanged between you and Maureen on April 2nd. And is it fair to say that you exchanged about 10 messages beginning at around 6:56 p.m. on April 2nd?
April 2nd. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine, take your time.
I don't see the dates.
Sure.
Oh,
Yes, we'll be
okay.
beginning.
Yes, I see them now. Yep,
Okay, fair to say you exchanged about 10 text messages with her beginning at 6:56 p.m.?
correct.
All right, and during this exchange, did Maureen discuss with you her upcoming plans?
She talked to me about her kid, like how she was gonna talk to the kids.
And without getting into the content, I'm gonna direct your attention specifically.
Okay.
Did she just talk about upcoming plans? And we're gonna look at this text message here. I'm gonna read it out loud, and then I'll have some questions for you.
Sure.
I'm waiting on my mom about Saturday. If she can't watch kids, I would probably ask you to watch kids so I can do some moving to Cindy's. I want kids away because it is upsetting for them to see their stuff taken away, even if you tell them they will get it back. I can't ask Billy because he constantly changes his mind and I don't want to get stuck. Was that text message sent to you?
Yes, it was.
The blue bubble at the bottom that says okay, was that your response to her?
Yes.
All right, and this is the state's full exhibit at this point, and now I'm directing your attention to a calendar that shows April 2nd. And were you referencing and discussing plans for that upcoming Saturday, April 6th?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'd like to turn to your conversations with the defendant during this time frame. Do you remember the last time that you saw the defendant prior to Maureen's death?
I don't remember.
Okay. And, well, I'm also now showing you State's Exhibit 43, which is a communications chart. Shows multiple text message conversations and some phone calls between you and the defendant's cell phone, 603-845-7815. Is it fair to say that you communicated with the defendant on March 29, 2019?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm showing you some text messages here. If you can just please take a look at those.
And what was that exhibit number?
Oh, yes, that's State's Exhibit 51.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this is State's Exhibit 51 I have up on the screen now. So I'm going to direct your attention down here to Friday, March 29th. So this text exchange begins with, "How you doing?" Was that sent by you or received by you in the green?
That was sent by me.
Okay. And this text message to the defendant, the response you then got is, not good, but surviving.
Correct.
So that was sent by the defendant to you?
Correct.
All right. And then you respond, what are you doing this weekend? Correct?
Correct.
And then it might be a little bit hard to see up at the top there. But you then say, well, I guess this is to be expected. This is a shitty time for you. Is that in response to him saying that he was not good but surviving?
Yes.
So he then responds to you, packing the house up with Maureen. You still at conference? That's sent to you from the defendant?
Correct.
And you respond, no, I'm home, right?
Correct.
And then he responds, mind if I call or are you at work? Correct?
Correct.
And then you respond, I'll give you a call in a couple minutes, and he says, okay. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, so now looking at the cell phone communications chart, it shows that you did have a phone conversation with him for about 35 minutes. And then this is March 31st, 2019, with a phone call lasting one phone call lasting about 45 minutes. Were the topics discussed during your communications on March 29th and 31st about the same type of topics?
Yes.
And do you remember some of the things that you spoke with the defendant about on March 29th and March 31st?
I don't remember much, but what I do remember is talking about his options of where he could move. That's what I remember.
Do you remember anything about him talking about going to school?
The kid, no.
If I showed you your transcript, would that help refresh your memory?
Sure. Yep.
Did that refresh your memory?
Yes, I do remember that call.
Okay, so did the defendant talk to you about wanting to go to school?
Yes.
What did he say?
He was thinking about going back to school and going to law school.
Okay, and did he say he wanted to go to law school to fix injustices against him? And without getting into any specifics?
Yes.
Okay. And what else did he talk to you about during that call that you remember?
He didn't. So what I had said earlier, where I remembered part of the conversation was about him moving to Maine, and he was worried that he wouldn't see his kids, and he didn't want to be a part-time dad. So he thought he would fight Maureen on custody. That was part of the conversation.
And what was in Maine?
My mother has a second home in Maine.
And what was he intending to move to that home in Maine?
That was a potential option for him, as and I think was what he had agreed to do to sell the house.
And how did he feel about his planned living situation to go and live in Maine?
He didn't want to live in Maine.
Was that phone call that you had with the defendant on March 31st the last time you remember actually speaking with him?
I believe so.
Okay, again, now I'm just looking at the calendar, so we're talking about conversations on the 29th and the 31st. When the defendant talked to you about the plan for him to go out and to move to Maine and for Maureen's plans to move out and take the kids, what was his tone like?
I mean, he was angry. He was upset that this is what was happening. He didn't want to leave his house.
Now I'd like to direct your attention to April 4th, Thursday, April 4th, the day that Maureen died. Did you talk to your sister Karen that evening?
I did.
What did your sister tell you just generally?
That the kids weren't picked up at after school program, and and my mom were with them, and they didn't know where Billy and Maureen were.
Based on that, what did you do?
I drove to their house.
Did you do anything else?
I called the police, and I believe I called Matt, Maureen's brother, on the way.
So when you called the police, did you still continue on to the Argie's residence in Londonderry?
Yes, I did.
Were you at their home when the police arrived?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so now looking at State's Exhibit 43, this is the chart for April 4th, shows that for Maureen's phone, that you tried calling her at 7:38 p.m. Did you speak with her that night?
No, I did not.
And now for April 4th, 2019, for the defendant's phone, it shows that you tried calling him at 7:44 p.m. Did you speak to him that night?
No, I did not.
If I may just have one moment. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take the afternoon recess. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a brief recess to allow you to stretch your legs and use the restroom. Let us know when you're ready. We'll come right on back. Thank you. You can step down too. You can do that now before they start scooting by.
Sorry.
You can step down if you'd like now before they. Thank you.